Full Bloom is brought to you in part by the following. Welcome to Full Bloom, the award-winning show that celebrates life. Here's your host, Zita Christian.
Hi everyone, welcome to Full Bloom. I'm Zita Christian. Imagine that you're at your computer and you're working and something terrible happens and you wind up bringing your computer to someone who supposedly can repair it. And you hear words from that person, words like virus and crash and the blue death screen. And if you're like me, you get some serious anxiety. Well, we're going to talk about that tonight, and more importantly, we're going to talk about ways that these things can be fixed, or more importantly for you, things that you can do to help prevent those problems, because my guest is a computer doctor and she makes house calls. She's also a very, very dear friend, Marsha Browne. Marsha, thanks for being on the show tonight.
My pleasure, Zita.
So I know, because we have been talking about this for several months, that you are working on a really interesting new book, and it's called Speaking Geek. So tell me about Speaking Geek.
The actual title of the manuscript as it stands today is Speaking Geek, How to Have a Meaningful Relationship with Your PC Repairman. And the purpose of this manuscript is to help people navigate through the issues when they're in trouble. Because so often what happens is that there is a problem with the computer, you don't know who to call, you don't know what to do when the call is going on, and worse, you don't know what to do after the call has happened. And those are the exact three things that my manuscript addresses.
Tell me those again.
What do you do before you make a call to a PC technician?
Okay.
About something that is wrong with, that you suspect is wrong with your computer?
Okay.
What do you do while you're engaged in the repair process with the technician?
How to talk?
Well, part of what the manuscript is about is how to talk. Part of it is how to behave.
Okay.
Part of it is what is reasonable and what is not reasonable. And then the final part of the process is, okay, we've fixed the problem, or we've made a decision that we're not going to fix it and we have to get something new. So then you have to make a decision about what comes next. And what comes next might be, I have to buy a new machine. What comes next might be, I need a different PC technician. What comes next might be, the thing that caused that problem that just got fixed, I can prevent by doing something that I've learned through this process.
Okay. I know, again, as I said, because I know you well, that you're very passionate about this subject. So I want to ask you a little bit about why. Because I know you've been working with computers for, 20 years?
Try again.
25 years.
Keep going.
30?
Easily. 30 years.
Oh my.
My
Okay.
first job in high technology was in 1974. And I was working in the IT department in business analysis at the Ohio National Life Insurance Company. And at that time, all of the computing was handled by people who lived in a hole in the wall, and we would write programs on cards and shove them through decks of cards through the hole in the wall, and then the people on the other side would do something with the cards, and our programs would show up on the monitors. So since 1971, so actually it's about 40 years.
Wow, my. Things have changed a lot, haven't they?
Yes, and I was at the very forefront of the move toward personal computing, and I spent 30 years in the industry working with personal computing. And what has happened is that as the personal computers have become commoditized, everybody's got one.
So it's not a fad.
Even though I say computing is a fad, it's really not a fad. But the tools that you use for the computing, that could be considered a fad, because we've moved from having a desktop IBM PCXT to holding an iPhone or an iPod or a Zoom tablet or any of a number of different computing devices that are tailored for your specification and what your particular needs are. And the software that runs on those, there are similarities between some of the characteristics, but there are also big differences. So it's all about what you want. It's just like when you go to buy a car. Everybody's got a license, and in theory, you're allowed to drive any car that falls within the category of your license. But look at the vast array of
Very
cars.
true.
And the same thing is true with the technology. So people now have all of these choices, and unfortunately, they don't have to learn as much to run a computer as they do to drive a car. Nobody's going to give you a test to say you're allowed to
Have a computer?
have
Oh
the
my gosh,
computer,
well, thank goodness.
turn it on, plug it into a wall, go to the internet, send email to somebody, create a website. You don't have to have any kind of qualifications whatsoever. So my interest in this has been growing over time as I realize I hear more and more people who do not have a background in computer science who want to use a computer the same way that they use a car. They want to turn it on, they want to get from point A to point Z, and they don't want a lot of interference along the way.
And I don't want to have to know
And I
what is
don't
this
wanna have to
program
know.
and why is this not working and what are all these
Options.
dots and options and there's a language. It's a whole different language.
Yes, it is.
And I know for me, and I'm guessing that the people in the audience, there's got to be, I'm not the only one, the frustration for me comes from because I don't know the language, I don't know the implication of a decision that I might make when the screen comes up and it says, you know, check this or check this. And I don't know if I'm checking the right thing or not. And I don't know what happens. Can I undo? I mean, I know now Control Z will undo most anything. Control Z. So, but it is a whole realm. And these days, I just think that there's more intricacy and therefore, for me, more anxiety. So this whole idea of something going wrong with a computer and then a matter of, oh, I need somebody to fix it and it's not me.
Right.
Because, I mean, some basic things, yeah, absolutely. I will check to be sure that it's plugged in. I learned that. Absolutely learned that. So it's an important one. My monitor one time, well, I'll go ahead and tell the story. I bought a new monitor, one of those really pretty fancy ones, a great big one, and I went through the instruction book trying to find how to turn it on. It talked about what to do after once it was on, but I couldn't find out how to turn it on. I finally had to call the company and I said, there's no button, there's no switch, there's no toggle, there's nothing. And he said, it's right there on the front where the name is. I said, no, there's nothing here. Under it, behind it, around it, there's nothing. And he said, just run your finger over it. And I ran my finger over it and it turned on.
Now, see,
I had no idea.
That's a metaphor that many young people understand intimately because the iPhone, of course, Apple has made the gesture part of the regular idiom of using the technology and using the devices. So this opens a page, this turns a page,
Yeah.
this turns something on, this changes it, this turns it off, this widens it, this narrows it. I mean, there are all sorts of gestures now that we're expected to
Yes.
remember as well.
Yeah, new language.
The thing is, Zita, that a lot of times what people do is they panic.
Yes.
You know, never mind it's a different language. When something goes wrong, they just stop cold and they panic. What's going on? I don't know where to start looking. I don't know what to do. I need help. That's the first thing that they get to is, I need help. Well, who do you call for help?
Yes, and how do you know that that person's good?
Who do you call? How do you know they're good? But more importantly, what are you going to say to that person when you get them on the telephone?
Yes.
Or when you get in front of them in the store? Mm-hmm. Or when they come to your home and they're standing in front of your supposedly broken unit, what are you going to say to them? What you need to do is you need to be real clear before you ever pick up the telephone to call anybody or to contact a repairman What is the error you're seeing? What makes you think it's an error? Has it happened before? If it happened before, under what conditions did it happen before? What equipment is involved in this? Do you know your own operating system? Do you know the device model number? Do you know what software application you were using when whatever failure happened? Is there smoke? Is it making a bad noise? All of these things are clues that the PC repairman is going to use to run through a diagnostic to try and isolate into what the problem is. One thing that I know and have learned, and it's stood me in very good stead for the last 35 years, I know I've been using it, is a 7-step problem-solving technique.
Okay.
And one of the things that you should be looking for when you're evaluating whether a PC repair person knows what they're doing or not is, are they taking stabs in the dark, or do they have a well-defined problem-solving process and problem-solving skill set? A person who is just going to walk in the door and you say, it doesn't work, and that person says, okay, leave me alone for 20 minutes, I'll see what I can see. That's probably not a great diagnostic skill set.
All right, well, what?
Okay, the diagnostic skill set, the first thing a person needs to do in solving a problem, and you can do this for yourself, is really identify what your problem is as you see it. If you go to your doctor and you walk into the doctor's office and you say, I don't feel good, I'm achy, and the doctor's going to say, well, what part of you is achy? And now you're in a 20 questions give and take with the doctor, and you're wasting the doctor's time, you're wasting your time, and the doctor's trying to elicit responses from you. If you walk into the doctor's office, think about what the doctor's response will be if you walk in and say, I woke up this morning with a crick in my neck after having avoided being on my side all night, and I noticed that yesterday afternoon while I was raking that I felt something give in my shoulder. I don't know what it was. I rubbed a little liniment on it, but that doesn't seem to help.
So what you're talking about is not, when you say identify the problem, you don't mean diagnose the problem. You're saying, what are the symptoms? Tell me what looks like it's wrong.
Tell me what you've identified as your problem. I have a crick in my neck.
All right.
Is the problem. Here is the supporting data that I can give you that says this is what has been going on with me. The same thing is true with the computer. So if you say to the PC repairman, this computer doesn't work. Well, okay, what does doesn't work mean? Mm-hmm. Well, the screen is black and I can't make it do anything. Well, is it plugged into the wall?
Basic.
Is the wall plugged? Is it live? Can anything else plugged into the plug that the computer's in work? I mean, I've had people actually call me and bring me out to their houses, and I charge a service call for it, and it turns out that a 25-cent plug that's in their electric box has blown a fuse, and that's what's wrong. Mm-hmm. And as soon as we replace the fuse, the computer starts up, everything is running, and they're very embarrassed by not having done a little simple diagnostic for themselves.
All right.
So finding, what the narrowest problem statement you can is the first step.
Okay.
Be specific and get it to be as specific as you can. The second step in problem solving is always to assemble as many possible causes as you can.
So you want the tech to do some research.
Yeah, so the tech is going to research for you and say, okay, were you doing this? Did you try that? Is this going on? What else is in that PC? Do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have the other? And they're going to assemble all of these possible causes.
Okay.
And they're going to do a little bit of research to see, well, what could cause this kind of a symptom? The third step that comes in following the research is to narrow down to the most likely cause.
Yeah.
And what you want to do that is eliminate the causes out of hand. Start with the simplest one. Start with the simplest and the least expensive thing that you can. And always start from the wall inward to the machine.
Okay.
Just like I say,
Check the plug.
Check the plug, check the cable, check the connection. Now, go in a little deeper, and are we dealing with hardware? Are we dealing with software? Are we dealing with a peripheral device? Are we dealing with a mismatch on devices? Those are things that the technician will know how to get to. And, you know, obviously the further they go, the more expensive or the bigger the problem is, and the more likely that there's something that needs to be replaced. So, you know, you have to start with the simple thing first. Don't just assume it's always the bad thing at the very beginning.
Okay.
The next step in the problem-solving technique is going to be select a solution that you think might work. And, for example, a common thing that can go wrong with PCs is that after 3 or 4 years, memory modules can fail. And the computers that people run now that run on Vista or run on Windows 7 typically have anywhere from 2 to 4 to 8, even 8 gigabytes of memory installed in them, and some of the 64-bit systems have even more memory installed. And these are single inline memory modules or double inline memory modules that are cards in the computer. And if any one of those modules fails, it makes the computer fail as well. It can manifest a number of weird behaviors that to you will look flaky or unpredictable. To a technician who knows what to look for and who knows how to run a diagnostic for the memory, it's a very simple, trivial, inexpensive fix.
All right, so you find the solution, or the most likely solution.
So you find the likely solution,
test it out,
and you test the solution, and if it solves the problem, then you document what the problem was, and you refine the solution so that it is as narrow a solution as the problem statement was. Right. And then the final step is to say, okay, now, what could I do in the future that would prevent that problem from happening again? It might be something as simple as buying a better brand of memory. Some brands are better than other brands. If you bought your memory that you installed in your computer for $1.59 off of a Craigslist ad, you might want to consider that you might make a trip to a retail store and actually pick up a $25 module, and you might have a little bit better luck with it.
Now, I know that because you and I have worked together on my computer, on Dick's computer, on my laptop, on all sorts of machines I've had over the years, and you have advised me to keep a log, which I do. And I know that you have a log also, and I wondered if you could talk about that just a little bit, because I think it's a concept that initially I thought, oh, I don't need that, but now I truly see the value.
Yes, the log is a really valuable tool when you're doing both the diagnostic work and also when you're trying to identify what is wrong with your computer, even for yourself. Errors in a computer system don't just happen at random. There's programs, there are instruction sets, there's equipment that things happen a certain way. And what the logs do is they give you an orderly way of looking at these things. Now, what my log shows, this actually is showing you a customer's problem and what the steps I took were to diagnose what the problem actually was.
We don't even have to get really close on this, because trust me when I tell you, there's a lot of letters and dots, but I know that means something to you. Now, I know, unfortunately, Marsha, believe it or not, we don't have a lot of time left, and there's a couple things I really, really want to get to. So, you know, we've talked about the importance of the language, and we've talked about the really, really wonderful idea of having a procedure to follow to find out what the problem is. But the problems, that's really what I want to talk about tonight, because you have ingrained into our little writers group, because, you know, and you're always telling us you have to be sure you do this, and if you do nothing else, make sure you do this. I want you to talk about what I think of as the antibiotics for computer illnesses, viruses, and whatever. So you have ingrained in me, and I'm going to see if I get I wrote 4 down. Let me see if I've got them right, and then we'll talk about each one for a minute. Back up your work. Number 2, firewall. I have a firewall. Number 3, an antivirus program. And number 4, anti-spyware. So talk to me for a minute about each of those, about backup.
Okay,
Well, number 1, did I get them right?
Yes.
Okay.
Those are the 4 foundations
Okay.
of being secure in cyberspace.
Okay.
Those are the 4 foundations. Backing up your data, the machines that you're using are, for the most part, mechanical. Mechanical things have failure. When they're built with mean times to failure, or mean time between failure. With most PCs, everything that's in them has catastrophic failure, and they always measure that in mean time to failures.
All right.
So, knowing that something's going to fail, it's not a question of if it fails, it's a question of when. And knowing that if you don't have a backup of your data, of what's important to you, and by data, I'm talking about your pictures, I'm talking about all the documents that you have, I'm talking about things that you're working on, I'm talking about your personal files. If you keep online your finances or your tax returns, or you keep a list of your properties, if you're a property manager and you don't back up that data on a regular basis, your data is only as good as the last backup you have.
All right. I'm going to move forward quickly here. Firewall.
Firewalls. Firewalls, the purpose of a firewall is to control incoming and outgoing traffic across a wire onto the internet and off of the internet. So as soon as you plug your computer into the internet, if you do not have control of what's incoming to your computer and what's outgoing from your computer, somebody unscrupulous could put something on your computer that would send all of your personal data to some identity thief in Russia or China or Yugoslavia or Romania or wherever. And they could also at the same time decide that they're going to use you as a mail bot. And what they'll do is they'll set up a little program that spits out 700 mails a minute of spam that eventually your ISP is going to shut you down for doing.
All right. And the firewall stops that.
The firewalls stop that. And in fact, firewalls are a built-in functionality in both Apple computers as well as in the Microsoft computers, and most reputable antivirus suites offer a firewall capability as well. And there are firewall standalone applications that you can purchase.
All right. What about antivirus?
Antivirus. You need antivirus programs to protect you from malware in the form of worms, trojans, rootkits, backdoor engines, mailbots, anything that can get into your computer and propagate itself on its own and repopulate on its own. So I'm sure you've heard the stories about people who get this a message that says, there used to be a virus called the Cookie Monster. And every 15 minutes it would pop up a screen at you and say, give me a cookie. And you would have to type the word cookie in, and if you didn't, it would stop all of the processing on your computer. Oh my. Now, this was a long, long time ago, but essentially this is what viruses will do, is aggravate you just to death, and they may destroy your data, or they may mess with your resources in such a way that the resource becomes unusable to you.
All right. Anti-spyware.
Anti-spyware. Spyware and adware are a variant of malware, malware being the overarching view of everything. And spyware is used to track you. And spyware can take the form of applications that watch what you're doing and report back to the home office somewhere out in the cloud and says, she's doing this today, she's doing that today, she's doing the other. Or they can take the form of keyloggers, which turn themselves on, run for several minutes, and they capture screens that you're looking at. They capture every key that you type.
Oh my.
Including your passwords, including your account numbers, including anything that shows up on the screen, and then ships that back out into the internet, into the cloud, to the calling program. So this is a big source of identity theft.
All right, so I am sufficiently scared. Okay. And
good.
Yes, and I understand that. So, but you have been, you've I know that there are programs. There are anti-spyware programs. There are antivirus programs. There are firewalls. There are ways to back things up. And my question is, if I'm using all of that, is it perfect? Is there still a chance that some sort of malware might get through?
Well, I learned yesterday that there are 312 million lines of code in Windows 7. And I can tell you as a software developer and a software development manager that anything over 100,000 lines of code is going to have bugs in it.
Oh my.
So you do need the protection, and Microsoft actually provides, now with Windows 7, they provide security essentials that include a firewall and anti-spyware and antivirus as an effort in good faith to keep their customers secure from whatever can go on. We are now seeing that in other platforms like the Android honeycomb, we're seeing it in Linux, we're seeing it in Apple's, and now also with the iPhones with iOS, that hackers are going where the money is.
Oh my gosh. Well, Marsha,
so they're going to try.
They'll try, yeah, every way. Now we only have about a minute left, and I want, the most important thing that I want to ask you about, what are the most common ways that people get malware on their computer?
The very most common way is social networking. And by that, I am talking about email. Emails. Every time you get an email from somebody who you know, who you think you know, and you don't bother to check, is that mail really from that person, and it's got a link in it, if you click that link and that mail is a spoofed email, you've just installed a virus or a Trojan or a rootkit or something onto your computer. And what's worse, it's going to grab your address book and it's going to send that mail out to all of your friends too.
Oh, great.
So it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Great, just what I need. We have a minute left. Okay, so the clicking on links in email, we don't want to do that. What about using those free Wi-Fi spots, like you go into a coffee shop and...
Okay, using the hotspots, Wi-Fi hotspots are great things, and I'm all for free computing anytime you can get it. However, those are places you absolutely should not ever enter a password. You should never enter an account number. You should never enter personal data such as your social security number, your date of birth, even your address, because those lines are unencrypted and there could be somebody sitting at a table not 10 feet away from you with a little computer. It looks like they're writing, and what they're using is a net stumbler that's just picking up all the data that's going across the unencrypted line.
Oh, this is frightening. I don't like this at all. However, I do know that because I know you and because I understand the work you're doing on the new book, Speaking Geek, and we'll have you back when the book is out, that there are methods people can do to protect themselves. That, number one, I mean, you have to be alert and you have to know what's going on. Now, we've been showing your email when we identify you, and let me just say that you can get in touch with Marsha directly if you like. You can always get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with Marsha. I know that you have had people ship computers to you from Colorado,
everywhere,
from New Jersey,
California,
and that you do house calls. And I'm sure that Daniel, your husband, loves having some personal IT tech in the house, which is great.
My family in France loves it too.
Oh, wonderful, them too. Well, Marsha, I'm afraid we're out of time, and this has been fascinating. I'm there's a little anxiety, but also a good feeling knowing that there's some things I can do to help this. So thanks very much for being on the show. And also let me say a thanks to my FB crew and to you in the viewing audience. I say this every week, and I mean it sincerely. I do know the value of time, and thank you for sharing another evening with me. Do join us again next time. Bye-bye.
Full Bloom is brought to you in part by the following: